They say the higher the pheromone compatibility, the better the offspring. My compatibility with Mike is 99%, but he can't stand me. He says anyone controlled by pheromones is no better than an animal in heat. To fight against our destined bond, he pushed me away and started dating a string of different omegas. He even left me alone in an empty classroom during my heat. Desperate, I latched onto the cold, top student in our class and begged him to mark me. Later, when Mike caught the new pheromones on me, he cornered me, looking crazed. But our compatibility is the highest. The alpha behind me bit my neck, his voice teasing, higher than 100%? I didn't expect my heat to come early. I was out of suppressants, and the sweet peach scent of my pheromones was pouring out of me uncontrollably. Fighting back a wave of heat, I called Mike. It rang for a long time before he picked up. "Chloe, what kind of drama are you pulling now?" His voice was impatient, drowned out by the noise of electronic rock music. He was at a club again. I didn't have the energy to argue with him. I just managed to whisper, "Mike, I'm in heat. Can you bring me some suppressants?" There was a pause on the other end, then a scoff. "You know our pheromones are a near-perfect match, and you're still making excuses to see me. Are you hoping I'll lose control and mark you, forcing my hand?" "I'm not." Mike wasn't interested in my explanation. That childhood engagement was our parents' idea. I never agreed to it. "Don't get any unrealistic ideas about me. I'm never going to like you." He laughed coldly, his words slurring with alcohol. "Besides, why call me when you're in heat? Sounds to me like what you really need is a bedpost to hump." Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. I curled up on the floor, my legs too weak to stand, without even the strength to hold my phone. Hot, felt like a fire was burning in my chest. School had ended hours ago. Everyone was gone. No one knew there was an omega in heat hiding in a classroom. I gasped for air, my mind a complete blur. Just as I was about to lose the last of my senses, I heard a creak. The back door opened, and a sliver of the setting sun sliced into the room. The person was backlit, and I couldn't see their face. I only heard them call out softly, "Chloe?" I recognized the voice. It was Leo, the quiet, straight-A student. The pheromones in the classroom were overwhelmingly thick, and Leo quickly realized what was happening. His voice was a bit stiff. "I'll go buy you some suppressants." The little store on campus was long closed, and the nearest pharmacy was over half a mile away. An omega in heat is desperately insecure. I didn't want to be alone. The fear of being by myself washed over me like a tidal wave. I clung to him like a drowning person to a piece of driftwood, my voice hoarse. "Don't go." The boy stopped in his tracks and pulled out his phone, saying something into it. After a moment's hesitation, he knelt in front of me. "An ambulance is on its way. You just have to hold on a little longer." His mouth moved, and I recognized the individual words, but my brain couldn't piece them into a coherent sentence. It felt like thousands of ants were crawling over my heart, itchy and hot, almost suffocating. Besides suppressants, the only thing that can relieve an omega's heat is an alpha's pheromones. And Leo was an alpha. The moment I realized this, every cell in my body seemed to scream with excitement, with want. My body was no longer under my control. I pushed myself up and grabbed the boy's collar. Caught off guard, Leo stumbled and fell toward me. I took the chance to climb onto his shoulders, sniffing at his neck like a puppy. His shirt was buttoned to the very top, and he had a suppressant patch on his neck. He was completely covered up. Other than the clean scent of laundry detergent, I couldn't smell a trace of his pheromones. "Give them to me." I was so desperate I could have cried, roughly tugging at his buttons but having no strength at all. Leo grabbed my hand, stopping me from fidgeting. His voice was raspy. "Chloe, you can't." I lowered my head without a word, just rubbing myself against him. "I want your pheromones. Please, will you give them to me?" The classroom was filled with my scent. The rich pheromones practically coated Leo until he smelled like a peach, too. He clenched his fists tightly, the veins on the back of his hands popping out. His long eyelashes cast a shadow on his cheeks, His face flushed red as if he was struggling to hold something back. I stared at him, mesmerized. Leo was incredibly reserved and always kept to himself. Before this, I'd never had any real interaction with him. It's no exaggeration to say this was the first time I had ever gotten such a clear, direct look at his face. Leo was unexpectedly handsome. He had long, narrow eyes and a high-bridged nose. His lips were full and red, and they looked so kissable. Influenced by the pheromones, I was much bolder than usual. My body moved faster than my brain. As my lips met his, a soft sigh escaped me. It was just as I imagined. I could taste his pheromones, a strong, rich rum. We learned in health class that besides marking, kissing, and mating were key ways to get pheromones. But it was too little, like a tiny stream flowing into a vast ocean. Instead of easing my symptoms, it just made me feel even more empty. Not enough. I want more. I licked his lips. Leo's eyes went wide with disbelief. I ignored him, pushing deeper without thinking. But in the next second, I was pushed away forcefully. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Leo's lips were glistening, and his voice trembled slightly. The potent pheromones were crashing wildly inside me. My glands were hot, stuffy, and itchy. I didn't say anything, just buried my head in the crook of his neck. I exposed the pale skin of my nape, my most vulnerable spot, completely to his eyes. Mark me. It hurts so much, Leo. Please just give me some of your pheromones. I had completely lost my mind, repeating his name over and over through my sobs. Just as I was about to pass out, a large hand clamped down on my neck. A dark, harsh voice whispered in my ear, "You'd better not regret this." Then, a sharp pain shot through the back of my neck as he bit through my glands. A steady stream of pheromones was forced into my body, instantly flooding my system. It was both painful and intensely pleasurable. My whole body went limp, and I lost all my strength. The strong scent of rum enveloped me. I hadn't been drinking, but I felt completely drunk. My eyelids grew heavy, and I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. I touched my glands through the suppressant patch and instantly flinched. I don't know how much force Leo used, but even a light touch was incredibly painful. I felt something strange in my palm and opened my hand to look. It was a button, probably one I'd accidentally torn off his shirt. On a strange impulse, I brought it to my nose and sniffed. I could almost still smell the faint scent of rum. Realizing how creepy I was being, my face flushed, and I quickly hid the button in my pocket. The doctor gave me some suppressants but called me back just as he was about to leave. "You should bring your boyfriend in to get your pheromone compatibility tested when you have time." Realizing who he was talking about, I tried to explain he's not my boyfriend, but the doctor just waved his hand, giving me an "I get it, I won't tell on you for dating" early look, so I just shut my mouth. Is there a problem? Not at all. It's just that his pheromones seem to have integrated very well within your system. I imagine your compatibility must be quite high. For alphas and omegas, pheromones are a major factor in attraction. The higher the compatibility, the stronger the control over each other's pheromones, and the higher the quality of their offspring. Generally, a compatibility of 80% is already considered very high. When Mike and I tested at 99%, it even made the local news. I didn't pay the doctor's words much mind. How much higher could it be? Could it really be 100%? So far, no one in the world had ever shown a 100% pheromone match. My phone buzzed suddenly. It was a message from Mike. "I'm sorry, Chloe. I was drunk yesterday and said things I didn't mean. I rushed to the classroom, but no one was there. Are you home now? I'll come find you." I stared at the screen coldly, feeling nothing at all. Once words are spoken, whether intentional or not, they cause irreversible damage. After a long pause, I blocked him. I couldn't tell if it was relief or regret. Maybe it was a bit of both. Mike and I grew up together. We were inseparable since kindergarten, as thick as thieves. Our parents used to joke that we wouldn't be able to be so close after we presented. Mike would puff out his chest and declare without hesitation, "If we're the same, we'll be brothers. If we're different, I'll marry Chloe. We're not splitting up, no matter what. His confident declaration always made both our families roar with laughter. I'd kick him under the table and protest, "Why can't I be the alpha?" Mike would glance at me quickly, his face turning red. Then I'll marry you." I suddenly had to laugh. In the first semester of our junior year, we both presented. 1 alpha, 1 omega. A 99% pheromone compatibility, unexpectedly high. The local community reporters interviewed us, people online started shipping us, and our parents were so thrilled they basically sealed the engagement on the spot. I didn't feel much of anything. I don't think I had even processed it. Only Mike hung his head, looking less than pleased. He started avoiding me, giving me the cold shoulder, and heading straight to clubs after school. I could feel it. My best friend of over a decade was drifting further and further away. I didn't know what I had done wrong, so I chased after him, wanting an answer. But my persistence only earned me his deeper resentment. "Everyone is pushing me to be with you, but no one cares if I want to. A life controlled by pheromones. It's disgusting." Seeing him passed out drunk on the floor, I didn't know what to feel. Honestly, I just wanted to be good friends with him like before. I never thought it would bother him so much. After my heat ended, I went back to school. Walking into the classroom, I immediately spotted Leo sitting by the door. He was in his blue and white school uniform, his shirt collar still buttoned to the top. He looked so prim and proper, almost ascetic. I licked my lips. The back of my neck, under the suppressant patch, started to feel inexplicably warm. I deliberately walked past him, but he just kept his head down, not even sparing me a glance. Cold and distant, as if he wasn't the one who had pinned me by the neck and bit my glands in this very classroom just a few days ago. He was trying to distance himself from me. Realizing this, I suddenly felt a pang of annoyance. He kissed me, he bit me. It wasn't going to be that easy to go back to being strangers. Perhaps I stared for too long, because the boy finally reacted. He looked up, his eyes dark and swirling with an indecipherable desire. He spoke in a voice only we could hear. "What? Isn't your heat over? If you don't want to get bitten again, stay away from me." It was as if he had torn off a long-worn mask, showing me his darker side without any reservation. I was stunned for a second, but my heart started pounding wildly. When I dared to look again, he had lowered his eyes, returning to his usual cold demeanor. It was as if the last few seconds had been a hallucination. I went back to my seat, and as soon as I sat down, Mike came over. "Chloe, why did you block me? Are you still mad?" He was very close, and even with my suppressant patch on, I could still smell his pheromones. The scent of mint filled my nose, and I suddenly felt sick all over. It was strange. Our high compatibility used to make me unconsciously want to be near Mike. But today, the smell of him made me feel nauseous. It took all my effort to suppress the urge to vomit. I frowned, pulled a mask out of my pocket, put it on, and subtly moved away from him. He noticed my movement. Mike's eyes widened in disbelief. "Chloe, are you disgusted by me?" "No, I just have a cold and don't want to get you sick." "Really?" He looked skeptical but didn't press the issue. After all, in everyone's eyes, I was the one chasing him. Why would I be disgusted by him? At the front of the class, our homeroom teacher tapped the desk to announce we were changing seats. Seats were changed once a semester, chosen freely based on class rank. Leo was the first to get up, moving his books to a corner. He was a lone island, isolating himself from everyone else. Everyone was used to it by now. When it was my turn, Mike suddenly called out to me. "Chloe, I promised my buddy we'd sit together." He didn't finish, but I knew what he meant. Mike's grades were poor, so he always had to choose his seat last. But everyone knew about our high pheromone compatibility, so the students always tacitly left the seat next to me open for him. "Got it." I nodded, and then, under the watchful eyes of the entire class, I pulled out the chair next to Leo and sat down. The classroom fell silent instantly. "You?" Leo was clearly stunned, as if he hadn't expected me to be so forward. "What? Is there someone you wanted to sit with? Should I move?" I blinked my big, innocent eyes, looking at him pitifully. I scooted closer, my chin almost touching his shoulder. Leo turned his head away, a blush creeping up his earlobe. He spoke stiffly, explaining, "No. There's no one I want to sit with." I nodded, satisfied. Good. Leo was a clam. I could chatter next to him all day, and he wouldn't say a single word. I liked to tease him for fun. Every time I got a little closer, he'd bristle like a hedgehog. Then, with a red face, he'd tell me not to get so close. Watching his retreating back as he fled once again, I couldn't help but question myself. My peach-scented pheromones couldn't be that bad, right? There was a commotion at the door. I looked up to see a freshman Omega confessing her feelings to Mike. Mike was good-looking and had a high-profile personality. When he first started high school, he was voted the most handsome alpha of his year. Things like Omegas confessing to him happened every other day. I lost interest and looked away, reaching out to poke the person in front of me. Hey, I actually think Leo is way more handsome than Mike. I know he's a little cold, but is it possible not a single person has a crush on him? Because he's a defective alpha. A defective alpha? I froze. My desk mate lowered their voice. He can't even produce pheromones. No Omega would want to sign up for that kind of trouble. Just as they finished speaking, Leo walked in from outside. My eyes narrowed, following him as he sat down. I rested my chin on my hand, quietly tracing the delicate lines of his side profile. A small ripple went through my heart. A defective alpha? Then who was the person who marked me and pumped me full of pheromones in the classroom that day? What is it? Noticing my stare, Leo touched his own face, his tone a bit unnatural. I grabbed the sleeve of his jacket, feigning a flirtatious tone. You wear so many layers, aren't you hot? Or are you hiding some kind of dark secret? As if I had touched a nerve, Leo shot up from his seat. He shook my hand off, his expression changing abruptly. Don't touch me. His voice was loud enough to cause a stir of hushed whispers around us. See, he really is a defective alpha. Such a weird temper. I don't know what Chloe is thinking. Sitting next to him, Leo looked away, seemingly unfazed by the comments. My expression froze. I stood there for a couple of seconds before awkwardly pulling my hand back. I was all too familiar with the look on his face. It was the same cold expression Mike had when he told me to stop chasing him. I had always thought that after Leo chose to help me through my heat that day, our relationship had changed. At least we could be friends, right? I guess I was just being naive. Maybe he didn't need friends at all. I laughed at myself and silently looked away. And so I missed the way Leo's breathing became uneven, and the way his hand, hanging by his side, trembled slightly. Leo and I were in a cold war. To be precise, I was unilaterally giving him the cold shoulder. I stopped talking to him. When I had a question I couldn't solve, I'd ask the teacher instead of him. I even deliberately went the long way around if I saw him in the hallway. But unexpectedly, Leo was the one who got anxious first. He actually took the initiative to break the ice. A small cake appeared in front of me. Leo stood to the side, clutching his hands, looking like he wanted to say something. What's this for? I saw it on the way. It's peach flavored. I thought you might like it. Peach, the scent of my pheromones. I couldn't believe he remembered. My ears grew hot, but I still huffed and turned my back to him. I hate cake. Take it away. After a moment of silence, I heard the rustle of plastic. When I looked back, both Leo and the little cake on my desk were gone. Seriously, dude? You're not even going to try to say a few nice things? I'm super easy to win over. I was thinking that if he just apologized, I'd meet him halfway. Now I was even angrier. This mood lasted until the afternoon PE fitness test. Sit-ups were done in pairs. Everyone else quickly found a partner, leaving only Leo standing there alone, looking like a sad little puppy. After a moment of hesitation, I sighed and finally walked over, holding down his legs for him. I got plenty of curious looks, even from Mike, who was not far away. He was frowning, a complicated expression on his face, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Chloe. Leo's eyes lit up the moment he saw it was me. Seeing his dazed look, I spoke irritably. You don't want to be partners? Fine, I'm leaving. I do. He seemed genuinely afraid I would just walk away. He put his hands behind his head and quickly started doing sit-ups. In almost no time, he had caught up to the others. Couldn't help but marvel. Damn, this kid has some serious core strength. After a few dozen more, Leo's pace finally started to slow. Using the upward motion, his head slowly drew closer to mine until they were almost touching. I could hear his faint panting. "Chloe, I'm sorry." I looked up and met his gaze. The boy's clear eyes were full of sincerity. "I didn't mean to lose my temper with you that day. It's just..." He paused, a conflicted look on his face, as if he had a secret he couldn't share. "If you don't want to talk about it, then don't. I'm not trying to force you. Everyone has their own little secrets they can't talk about. I get it." To help him relax, I changed the subject. "Are you really not hot?" The gym was stuffy and breathless. Leo's forehead was covered in tiny beads of sweat. He hesitated for a moment, then finally unzipped and took off his jacket, revealing the long-sleeved hoodie underneath. After PE, Leo stayed behind to put away the equipment. I quietly slipped into the equipment room with him. I watched him put the last racket away, then he turned, leaning on the rack, and we stared at each other in silence. Leo was tall, and his broad shoulders could have hidden my entire body behind them. The equipment room was dim, with only a few beams of sunlight creeping in through a small window in the corner. It reminded me of the setting sun shining through the crack in the classroom door that day. I felt like I could smell that intoxicating scent of rum again. "Chloe, don't you want to know why I have to hide my pheromones so carefully?" Was he finally going to come clean? My heart fluttered, but I put on a show. "It's okay. I'm not that curious." Lies. I was dying of curiosity. Tell me now." As if he had made a momentous decision, Leo pulled me to a corner and had me sit on a mat. Then he crossed his hands, grabbed the hem of his shirt, and pulled it over his head. "Whoa, brother. Is this right? Explain all you want, but why are you taking your clothes off?" This was the first time I'd seen a half-naked alpha since I presented. But before I could even blush, I realized something was wrong. In the dim light, I could finally see clearly. Leo's bare skin was covered in purple bruises and countless tiny needle marks. It's pheromone disorder syndrome. Leo's voice was calm. "During my rut, when others need 1 dose of suppressant, I need 10 times that amount just to barely keep myself under control. The doctors said if this continues, my glands will eventually fail. I'll lose my ability to reproduce and become a defective alpha. Is there no solution at all?" "There is." Leo looked down at me, his dark eyes growing even deeper. "And Omega's pheromones can alleviate my symptoms, but I'm allergic to almost all of them." My breath hitched. I could hardly believe it. It was a dead end. But then, images flashed through my mind. I swallowed hard and asked carefully, "You're not allergic to my pheromones, are you?" Leo knelt on one knee, his nose almost touching mine. He was so close I could feel his hot breath on my face. "Chloe, since I presented, you are the only person I've been close to without having an allergic reaction." He lowered his voice, like the brush of a feather, making my ears itch. "Little Peach, I really like this scent." It sounded like a confession, and my whole body felt like it was on fire. "My being cold and avoiding you, none of that was what I wanted. It's because I'm too greedy. The moment I smell even a little bit of you, I crave more. I'm afraid that one day, no amount of suppressants will be able to control my pheromones." Silence fell around us. Leo leaned quietly against the mat. He looked calm and collected, but his white-knuckled grip betrayed his nervousness. Right then, he was like a stray dog, wagging its tail obediently, waiting to be chosen or abandoned. My heart melted. I spoke almost without thinking. "I'll help you." "What?" Leo's head shot up, his eyes wide with disbelief. I looked him in the eyes, my voice firm. "From now on, when you're in your rut, I'll give you my pheromones. Okay? Stop taking those suppressants. After all, we're friends. Friends help each other out. Isn't that normal? Friends." The boy repeated the word softly, mulling it over. All the ambiguity and unspoken feelings dissolved into that one word. "Can I have a little of your pheromones now?" he asked in a small voice, It was both a request and a test. Put your clothes on first. Leo's face turned red, and he fumbled to pull his hoodie back on. I smiled helplessly and stepped forward to give him a big hug. His arms slowly wrapped around me, finally holding me tightly in his embrace. The scents of rum and peach intertwined. It wasn't a strong scent, but it was enough to make both of us sigh in comfort. The back of my neck began to heat up. Feeling the change in my body, I quickly pushed him away. Okay, that's enough. Leo lifted his head from the crook of my neck. His eyes were misty, and even the corners were tinged with red. My heart was pounding, feeling like it was about to leap out of my chest. I turned my face away from him, hastily pushing the door open and running out. As I left the school, I saw Mike standing at the intersection. He was standing there casually, one hand in his pocket, looking like he was waiting for someone. I had no intention of greeting him and walked straight toward the bus stop. But a hand suddenly blocked my path. Chloe, let's walk home together today. Mike smiled, standing very close. Inevitably, I caught the scent of mint on him and the scent of another, unfamiliar Omega. I frowned without a word, got on the bus by myself, and found a window seat. Mike froze for a second, then quickly followed me. Have you been drinking? Why do you smell so strongly of alcohol? I turned my head away and ignored him. Mike gave a dry laugh and awkwardly changed the subject. Remember how we used to go to the arcade right after school? We'd often play all afternoon. And then we'd both get dragged home by our ears and get a good old-fashioned spanking. Talking about the past, Mike's expression softened, as if the rift between us had never existed. I found it kind of funny. He was the one who pushed me away, the one who told me to stop bothering him. Now, for some reason, he was acting like nothing had happened, getting all sentimental. What are you trying to say? I interrupted him impatiently. Chloe. Mike hesitated. What's the deal with you and Leo? So after all that build-up, that was the real point. What's it to you? What do you mean, what's it to me? Mike got agitated. We have a childhood engagement. It's not right for you to be getting so close to another alpha. I had to laugh. I couldn't resist throwing his own words back at him. What stupid childhood engagement? I never agreed to it. And besides, I think you're right. An Omega like me really shouldn't get too close to an alpha. To keep my boyfriend from getting jealous, you should probably stay away from me from now on. Boyfriend? Mike muttered the word, his face a mask of disbelief. Weren't you just asking me what my relationship with Leo is? Well, I'm telling you now. He's my boyfriend. But he's a defective alpha. That's right. I nodded. So, I like him for who he is, not for his pheromones. How is that possible? Mike looked devastated. I was already walking away, but he was still standing there, completely stunned. The next day at school, Mike's seat was empty. When my eyes met Leo's, I felt a little awkward. Using him as a shield yesterday was one thing, but now that he was right here in front of me, I felt a bit guilty. What's wrong? Sensing my unease, Leo asked in a low voice. I fidgeted with the hem of my shirt and looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Yesterday, Mike came and asked me what was going on between us. Want to know what I said? Leo froze and slowly sat up straight. An air of ambiguity floated between us. He cleared his throat, deliberately keeping his voice calm. Aren't we friends? Yeah, but I told him you were my boyfriend. Boom. Leo's face instantly turned bright red. His eyes darted around, not knowing where to look. I looked down and let out a short laugh. Then I reached out and poked his arm. So, are you or aren't you, Mr. Genius? Can I be? Leo looked down, his voice tight with nervousness. But then it suddenly became firm. Chloe, I want to be your boyfriend. Seeing his clear eyes, my heart softened completely. I took his hand and said softly, Leo, I accept. With college entrance exams approaching, most of the easy, non-essential classes were canceled. This was our last health class. I propped up my chin, bored, half listening. Under the desk, I secretly reached for Leo's hand. At the front of the room, the teacher tapped the blackboard and started talking about pheromone compatibility. The higher the pheromone compatibility, the higher the quality of the offspring. Currently, the highest known compatibility in the world is 99%. Because it's so rare, it's often referred to as a fated mate bond. Is that like Mike and Chloe? Someone asked. In an instant, almost every eye in the room was on me. The teacher quieted the chatter with a smile. Since we have a case study in our class, I'll use these two students as an example for our next point. Mike and Chloe have a pheromone compatibility of 99%. If Chloe were to be accidentally marked by someone else, Mike could unconditionally overwrite the other alpha's pheromones in her system. Even a permanent mark? Someone asked. Of course. Why else would it be called a fated mate bond? The hand holding mine squeezed painfully. I turned my head and saw Leo's brow furrowed, his whole body tense. What if someone had 100% compatibility with Chloe? A girl asked timidly. The teacher paused, then laughed. Then that person could overwrite any alpha's pheromones. However, a 100% match has never been documented in the world. That class was agonizing. If looks could kill, I would have been shot full of holes by my classmates. When the bell finally rang, I let out a long sigh of relief. But when I turned, I noticed something was wrong with Leo. His face was pale, his fists were clenched, and his whole body was shaking uncontrollably. Leo, are you okay? Chloe, I think my rut is starting. He reached into his bag, but I stopped him. You can't use suppressants anymore. I reassured him. Don't be scared. I'm here with you. After getting permission from our homeroom teacher, I went with Leo back to his place. It was a small, one-bedroom rented apartment. The whole place showed signs of only one person living there. You live alone? Where are your parents? Leo looked down, his voice raspy. They had a son, so they sent me here. They just send me money every month. He was vague, but I understood immediately what he meant. On the surface, it was independence. In reality, it was abandonment. My nose stung. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I stepped forward and hugged him. You poor thing. Leo buried his head in the crook of my neck, his voice muffled. It's okay. I have you now. He paused, then continued. Chloe, I'm so jealous of Mike. I'm jealous that he has such high compatibility with you. Jealous that everyone sees you as fated, but you're the one I like. I kissed his cheek, then his lips. Then I slowly began to release my pheromones. In the small room, the scents of peach and rum swirled and merged. It was intoxicating. Perhaps soothed by the pheromones, Leo's rut only lasted for 3 days. Other than feeling a bit mentally drained, he was back to normal. I had just thrown a pile of empty nutrient pack wrappers into the trash when my phone rang. Leo was lying on the bed, watching me silently. Mike is sick in the hospital. My mom's out of town, so she asked me to go check on him. Is that okay, boyfriend? I asked, shaking his hand and putting on my best cute voice. Leo kissed the back of my hand, his voice unbelievably gentle. Babe, I would never interfere with your friendships. Do what you want to do. The moment I walked into the hospital, Mike's parents rushed over to me like I was their last hope, pulling me into his room. He got into a fight at a club. The pheromones triggered his rut early. He's so stubborn, he refuses to take suppressants. He's barely conscious, but he keeps saying your name. Chloe, your compatibility is so high. Could you just give him some of your pheromones? We can't bear to see him like this. My refusal was swift and firm. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Pei. I have a boyfriend now. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to give Mike my pheromones. Ah! Mike's parents looked at each other, their expressions awkward. Perhaps our voices were too loud, because Mike, lying in the hospital bed, slowly stirred and woke up. Chloe. He was thrilled to see me, but his joy didn't last long. He smelled the lingering scent of rum on me. You let him mark you? How could you? I spoke coldly. This has nothing to do with you. Someone in rut is always emotional, and Mike was no exception. The scent of mint filled the room, and my body's defense mechanism kicked in, instinctively rejecting the unfamiliar pheromones. The room felt suffocating. I had done my duty by visiting, and I had no intention of staying any longer. Mike's parents held him down on the bed as he roared, his eyes red. Why? You were supposed to like me. Our compatibility is the highest. Who said I liked you? I couldn't help but retort. Mike, I only ever saw you as a friend. But now we can't even be that. Highest compatibility? I wasn't so sure about that. Back in the room, I clearly had an adverse reaction to Mike's pheromones. Remembering what the teacher said in health class, I pulled out my phone and called Leo. Boyfriend, do you have time to come to the hospital for a pheromone compatibility test? Leo and I sat side by side like a newlywed couple who had just gotten their marriage license. Incredibly nervous. 100%. The doctor burst out holding the test results, his already pale face flushed red with excitement. The world's first 100% compatibility case was discovered in our hospital. This is huge news. Even though I had expected it, the moment I saw the result, I was still stunned. Leo's eyes turned red. He hugged me tightly, tears streaming down his face as if they were free. After learning that Leo and I were a 100% match, Mike was so furious he almost jumped off the building. Of course, he didn't. His parents sent him abroad before the college entrance exams. Since he couldn't get into a university here, he had to go pay for an education overseas. When the exam results came out, Leo and I enrolled in the same university. He worked a summer job to earn living expenses, while I lounged on the bed in his rented apartment, enjoying the air conditioning. When he was tired, I'd reward him with a kiss and a hug. A 100% match really is different. On many nights, the small space brewed a charming and rich peach-flavored rum. The bed creaked. Leo captured my lips, his smile gentle. Caught you, my little peach.